Okay, here is another bonus feature. This is an extremely accurate, low cost, easy to make frame building jig. And it's based on two principles and one easy cut. And you got yourself an amazing tool so that you can make a bicycle that isn't all cockeyed, which you're going to put this much trouble into building a bike. You want it to be straight. So let's see what's happening here. Well, let's start at the beginning. Here is a jig for all the other components that are going to be part of this device. You see, it's just a simple piece of angle iron welded to itself at 90 degrees, kind of backwards from what you might think you would weld some tubing together. But what it enables you is to take a garden variety piece of square steel tubing. This is really based on this beam here of 2-inch off the shelf steel tubing. I have, you'll see on here right now, 4 vertical stanchions. 3 of them reflect the 2-inch back vertically, and one of them is a 1-inch. Okay. What's the point? Well, with this tool, you can make, once this is, in other words, once this one is made accurately, and as accurately as you make this is going to be as accurate as this jig is going to be, although there is some tweaking we can do. So you weld this piece of angle iron under this box tube, and you repeat however many iterations you need. Here's a axle holder. You see there's just a little bitty adjustment there. Here is for our steering tube, which will get a piece like that. And then there can be a lower piece to guide that. Some of these strange things are for my cargo bikes, which you wouldn't need if you were just making a normal bike. The crank, we just bolt on with this big bolt and some cones, and you can dial it right in. The idea being that you can position your axles for your dropouts, your seat tube, cranks, in my case, cargo. You know, that front axle and your head tube there. Now on this one, I've mounted this just on these little four screws per foot thing, and then it's on a little folding table, so the whole thing can actually get pretty small. And then it's all held together with, obviously, worm clamps, which are low cost, and everything changes without losing its parallelism, which is really the point of all this. Is you want your dropouts and your crank, your steering and your seat tube all in that plane of center line. And this is a lovely way to do it without spending a whole lot of money on aluminum and machining. And there's one more important thing I haven't shared with you, and that is how to make these cuts. And that's really cool. So I'm going to stop the video and go make the cut, or at least pretend to make the cut. Okay, here's how you'd mount that in there. You can see you got this thing mounted at the 45-degree angle there. Isn't that nice? And you've also got this tilted to the 45 degrees. So we're going at this 2 different ways, but it doesn't make a complicated cut. So what you want to do is you want to come down and cut it once like that, so it'll be at an angle, and flip it over 180 degrees and cut it again, and you'll see that you've revealed a beautiful little, like a fish mouth, only it's more like a diagonal fish mouth. And we'll go look at what those are, because I don't want to run this saw right now. Okay, where can we see one of these beauties? Well, let's look at one right here. So you can see if you make that cut, you end up with this diagonal fish mouth. Now, the cutting isn't nearly as critical as the jig, because what's going to happen next is you're going to take one of these things and mount that in a jig like that. In this case it's a tube, but the diagonal mounted pieces will once again clamp that in there and weld it. And if you made this thing accurately, everything else here will be really wonderful. Oh, important caveat. You need to put little shims in here because of the round radius on the inside here is almost always going to interfere with this. So I'm not showing it here, but underneath each one of these things are shims, which you can make your shims out of anything you want. I made mine out of this kind of rubbery stuff. They can be rigid, they can be aluminum, steel, as long as they're flat and consistently the same size and about that big. And you just need to put enough of them in to get that so it sits flush, and doesn't do that, because well, that would defeat the whole purpose of this whole thing, which is to make a accurate bicycle. So there's the tour of the frame jig. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of questions, but I'm real happy with this thing, and maybe if I get time I'll figure out. I'm trying to remember how I made this little guy so accurately, but I think probably started out putting those flat plates on the back end real precisely, and then making that a real nice accurate 90 there. And it's got to be real accurate this way and this way as well, where everything will be consistently crooked or consistently straight. So that's where you want to get a granite plate and a micrometer and somebody who knows what they're doing. But once you get that jig, you could make hundreds of these things and just use it over and over. Bye.